Hey, I'm so happy that you are here. Welcome back. Welcome to my playground where we dream, we play, we build, we realign, we cry, and then we excavate deeper to find joy, to find freedom, to find love, peace, healing, finding our true self. And now I want you to do something with me right now, before the strategy, before the planning, before the review of what it worked and what it did not work, what it needs to change, and the other second half of the year, before any of that. I want you to feel honestly, not to think about it, not to analyze it. Feel where you actually are right now, not where the brand says you are, not where the revenue report says that you are, not where the goals you set in January, the ones that they felt so clear and so possible and so exactly right for the year ahead said that you should be, where you actually are, in the body, in the quiet, private, honest to yourself place that it doesn't care about optics or performance or the story you have been telling about how the year is going, because I know what happens at the midpoint of the year. I know because I have lived it, and because the women that I work with, they lived in it. And because it is the one that the most predictable experience in the entrepreneur calendar, you reach in the middle of the year. You look at the goals, you measure the distance between where you plan to be and where you actually are. And one or two things happens. Either the gap is smaller than you expected and you feel brief or fragile satisfaction that is immediately followed by the quiet awareness that the goals were probably too small because part of you knew that you were playing safe when you set them, or that the gap is larger than you expected and you feel the specific complicated weight of having underperformed against your own declared intentions, which is the way that the world does not see because you haven't performed the confidence while privately carrying the shortfall. Either way, the mid-year moments arrives, and the instinct, the immediate, almost irresistible instinct, is to recalibrate the strategy, to adjust the goals, to tighten the execution, to do more faster, better, with more discipline and more accountability and more urgency in the second half that you brought to the first one. And I am here to tell you that the instinct, while understandable, is exactly wrong. Because the problem is not your strategy. The problem is not your discipline. The problem is not your consistency or your time management or your content calendar on your launch plan or any of the tactical variables that the mid-year review typically examines. The problem is alignment. The specific, measurable, structural alignment between who you have become in the first half of the year and the plan that was made by the woman who were before the year began, because you are not the same woman who set those goals. You have changed genuinely in the ways that it matters, in the ways that the first 6 months of living that experience have produced new clarity, new questions, new edges that they have been discovered through contact with reality. Some things you believe in January that you no longer believe. Some things you did not know in January that now you know. Some parts of the vision that they have expanded and some that they have contracted. Not from failure, from precision. And the plan, the goals, the targets, the structure you are measuring yourself against was built from a woman that you were, not the woman that you are now. The mid-year reset is not a strategy, it's adjustment, it is a realignment. The deliberated, honest, sometimes uncomfortable process of bringing the plan into congruence with the woman, not shrinking the woman to fit the plan, expanding the plan to match who she actually became. Today is about that realignment, the real one, the one that starts from truth, not from the gap between expectation and performance, but from the truth of who you are now and what the business actually needs from you in the next season. Before I build the alternative, I want to name what the typical mid-year review actually does. Because it is so pervasive, so normalized that it can be hard to see it is the problem rather than solution. the typical mid-year review does three things. Each one sounds reasonable. Each one built on a false assumption. And each one produces a specific kind misalignment that it compounds across the rest of the year. First, it measures you against January goals. Goals that were set in a specific emotional state, and in a specific context, with a specific understanding of your business and yourself, both of which they have changed. Goals that they might have been too small or too ambitious or too calibrated to the version of your offer that it no longer exists, or built around a market that condition has shifted, or organized around priority that the first half of the year revealed that it was not actually the right priority. Goals that they are in many cases no longer yours because the woman who set them was answering a different question than the woman that you are now. The second one, it locates the problem in execution. The review asks, why did we not hit the target? And the answer that it generates is always some version of, we did not execute well enough, not enough consistency, not enough volume, not enough discipline, not enough follow through. The strategy was right, the implementation was wrong. This framing, that the strategy was sound and the execution was the weak link. The default assumption of almost every business review process, and this is the most expensive assumption that you can make because it directs all your attention and all your corrective energy towards doing more of what may have been the wrong thing to begin with. It accelerates the misalignment rather than correcting it. The third, it treats the second half as a correction of the first half. More urgency, more intensity, more output to make up for the shortfall, to close the gap, to prove that the goals were achievable and the problem was only ever in the doing. The second half becomes a sprint built on resentment. Resentment towards yourself for the underperformance, resentment towards the year for not cooperating, resentment towards the business for requiring more than you can give. This is how burnout happens, not from the work itself, from the work done, from misalignment, from the specific exhausting experience of accelerating a strategy that it no longer fits the woman who's executing it, from the feeling of running faster on a path that you are no longer sure is yours. The alternative is the realignment, and it requires a fundamentally different starting point. Drop the word reset in the comments right now if the mid-year you are experiencing feels less like a strategy recalibration and more like confrontation with something deeper, something that the goals and the metrics and the gap analysis are not capturing. I read every comment. Tell me that you are here. The realignment is not one thing, it's four things. Each one addressing different dimension of the gap between the plan and the woman. And the order matters because the first area determines the others. Get the first one right, and the rest follows with the clarity that no amount of strategy or analysis can produce. Area number one, identity realignment. The first and most important area, the one that every business review process ignores because it is not a business variable, it is a you variable. And the business world has not been trained to look at your variables. Who are you now? Not who you were in January, not who you plan to be. Who are you now? After 6 months of building, 6 months of a client conversations, 6 months of content creation and market feedback, and the specific, irreducible education that only lived experience can provide. The woman who set the January goals had a specific understanding of her calling, a specific relationship with her authority, a specific capacity for visibility, for risk, for holding larger containers, for receiving more. In that understanding, that relationship, that capacity, they have changed. They always change because building a business changes the builder. Every client you have coached, every piece of content you have published, every boundary you have held or failed to hold, every moment of genuine transformation that you have witnessed, all of it, it has been shaping you, expanding you in some directions, confronting you with others, making certain things clear and certain things more complicated. The life reset that it matters most at the midpoint is the identity one. The honest, specific, unperformed assessment of who you are now, with the specific clarity you have earned, the specific edges you have discovered, the specific fears that you have either faced or postponed, and the willingness to let the plan reflect that woman rather than the one who made it. This is the realignment most women skip because it requires the willingness to change the plan, to adjust the goal downward, to expand a vision outward, to retire an offer that the old you thought that it was essential and the new you knows that it's misaligned, to name the direction that the old you was too afraid to go and the new you is no longer willing to avoid. The identity realigned asks, giving who I am now, not who I was, not who I was planning to become. What does the next 6 months actually need from me, from who I am now? What am I capable that I was not capable on January? And what am I no longer willing to do that I was tolerating then? These questions produce a fundamentally different plan than the gap analysis because the gap analysis optimized the old goals. The identity realigned optimized for the current truth. Area number two, offer realignment. The second area is where the identity meets the market. And it is the area where the first 6 months of data is most valuable because the market it has been telling you something all year. The question is whether you have been listening. Every offer in your business generate two kinds of data: performance data and energy data. The performance data is what the spreadsheet shows: revenue, enrollment, conversation rates, retention. The energy data is what your body shows. How do you feel when you're selling it, delivering it, thinking about it, explaining it to someone who's asking what to do? And here's what the mid year almost always reveals: there are at least one offer where the performance data and the energy data are pointing in different directions. The offer that it performs adequately but costs more energy than the revenue justifies. The offer that you have to force yourself to sell, that it requires the performance of enthusiasm that depletes you in the delivery even when the clients are satisfied. The offer that it was built by the January version of you, the one who needed the revenue or the social proof or the visible evidence, but that the current version of you has outgrown. The business pivot at the midpoint is not always a dramatic restructuring. Often is the specific, precise, sometimes uncomfortable decision to retire or restructure one offer, the one that is producing the most friction relative to what is returning, and redirect that energy towards the offer that the first 6 months has revealed is your genuine zone of genius, the one where the performance data and the energy data align, where the selling is natural, the delivering is alive, the clients are transformed, and the revenue reflects the genuine compounding value of work that is done from fullness rather than from obligation. Realigning means having the courage to follow the signal, to let the data, both kinds, to tell you something about the architecture of your business that the January plan cannot have predicted, and to build the second half around what is actually working rather than around what you hope it will work. Area number three, energy realignment. The third area is the one that the business conversation almost never names because energy is not a metric that appears on any dashboard, but it's the metric that determines the quality of every metric that it does. How are you actually not aspirationally, not performative, actually entering the second half of the year? Not the revenue, not the subscriber count, not the launching calendar. You, the woman through whom everything your business produces must pass. The first 6 months have consumed something. They always do. Building consumes, creating consumes, showing up, holding a space for transformation. And the consumption is not just time, it is a nervous system capacity. Creative reserves, emotional bandwidth, the specific quality of presence that it makes your work and not someone else. The how to reset your life conversations that matters at the midpoint is not the one about getting more organized or more disciplined or more productive. It is the one about honest assessment of the instrument and what it needs to be ready for the next season. Some of you are entering the second half, genuinely rested. You have found a rhythm that is sustaining you, a pace that allows you both output and recovery, a relationship with the building that it feeds you as much as it draws from you. And your realignment is about protecting that rhythm, making it non-negotiable, building the second half around the sustainability that you have discovered rather than treating it as a luxury that the urgency of the goals can override. And some of you are entering the second half already depleted, running on reserves that they were supposed to last the year, showing up from the place that is more like an obligation than a calling, more momentum than a line from fear of stopping than genuine desire to continue. And your realignment is not about strategy. It's about survival, about the specific non negotiable calendar level commitment to rebuild the reserves before the building can continue. Because the building, the one that is done from depletion, is never the building that it was possible from fullness. And you know this. The body has been telling you. The question is whether the midpoint is the moment you finally choose to listen. The energy realign asks, what does my body need in order to be the woman that the second half of this year requires? And what is the first half cost me that it has not been replenished? These are not soft questions. They are more strategic questions that you can ask. Because the business that is built by a depleted woman is a different business than the one that is built by a restored woman. Not less successful, differently successful, in a smaller range with a lower ceiling, with the specific invisible limitations the depletion imposed on creativity, on courage, and the willingness to make the bold move that the align is asking for. Area number 4, direction realignment. The fourth area is the one that it brings the first three together, and it is the one that it requires the most willingness to be wrong. Or more precisely, the most willingness to have been right for January and now to be right for July. The direction you set in January was the best direction available to the woman that you were, with the information that you have and with the context that existed then. And the direction was probably good. It was probably honest. And it was probably aligned for January. But the context has changed. The market has shifted. The clients you have worked with have revealed something about who you are most effective with and what transformation you are most qualified to deliver. The content that you have been creating has shown you which topics are alive in you and which ones are performed. The revenue patterns have revealed which offers are natural and which ones require continuous pushing, and you have changed. The clarity is different now. The calling is more specific. The edges that they were theoretical in January have been made real by contact, and the direction that it was aligned for the January version of you may not be aligned for the version of you that it has 6 months more of earning wisdom. Goal setting at the midpoint is not about making new commitments. It is about examining the old ones with the specific, honest, sometimes uncomfortable questions. Is this still the right direction? Not am I on track to hit it, but is still the right track? Because the right track in January and the right track in July are not always the same track. And the woman who has the courage to change direction at midpoint, not from failure, from clarity, is the woman who finishes the year in a fundamentally different direction than the woman who doubles down on a direction that she has outgrown. The direction realign us. Given everything now I know about my business, about my market, about my offers, about myself, what is the most aligned direction for the woman that I am now? Not that woman that I was, not the woman I plan to be, the woman that I actually am now. And then what would I need to release a goal and offer a timeline, a story about what this year it was supposed to look like in order to move in that direction with my full weight behind me? That release is the reset, not the addition, the release, the clearing of what no longer fits so that what does fit has the space to grow. Go to the realnextlevel.com and apply. If one of these 4 areas of realignment landed with the weight that it felt like more than agreement, if it felt like recognition, if you know in the body which area is the one that the midpoint is asking you to address, apply. Tell me which area. Tell me what you know that it needs to shift. I read every application personally, and the realign conversation is the most important one that we can have right now. Now, the architecture, the specific sequential do it this week process for actually conducting the realignment, not as theoretical exercise, but as live embodied business changing reset. Movement number one, the honest inventory. Before the new plan, before the adjusted goals, before the restructured offers, before any of it, an honest inventory. Sit with a journal, not a spreadsheet, a journal, because the inventory that matters the most is the one that lives below the numbers. And answer the following questions with the specific unperformed. Nobody will see this honesty that realignment requires. What worked in the first half? Not what it looked good, not what performed well, not what the metrics said, but what it actually worked, what felt alive, what produced genuine, lasting transformation, what moved the needle in a way that it felt like alignment rather than effort. What did you do that left you more energized after than before? What did not work? Not what failed, not what underperformed, but what felt did, what required force, what produced adequate results from depleted effort. What do you keep doing because the plan said to, not because the calling said that you need to do it? What was the January version of you committed to that the current version of you is no longer willing to sustain? And the question underneath both, what changed in between January and now? Not in your business, in you. What do you know now that you did not know then? What are you no longer afraid of? What are you newly afraid of? What expanded and what contracted? What became clear and what became more complicated? This is the mid-year reset, that it actually resets, the one that it starts from the truth of where you are rather than the gap between where you were and where you're planned to be. And the truth is always more useful than the plan because the truth is real and real things can be built upon. Plans built on outdated guessing about who you are, however precise, however well intentioned, are built on a foundation that the first 6 months have already shifted. Movement number two, the deliberated release. The second movement is the one that an achievement oriented approach to the mid year skips entirely. Because the achievement approach is about addition, more goals, more urgency, more execution. And the realignment is, in its most essential movement, about subtraction, what it needs to be released. A goal set by a woman you no longer are. An offer that it was built for a market position you have outgrown. A timeline that it was never aligned with the actual pace of your building. That it was borrowed from someone else's speed and never calibrated to your season. A story about what this year was supposed to look like. The specific, persistent, quietly oppressive narrative about where you should be by December. That is producing more anxiety than clarity. In relationship to the business, to the work, to the building itself, that has become more like an obligation than a calling in the months since January. A version of success that the January you thought she wanted, and that the current you is no longer sure if this is the point. It's the point how to get your life together. It's not the midpoint about doing more. It's about releasing what no longer serves the direction because the direction has shifted. The woman has shifted and carrying the old architecture into the new season, the old goals, the old offers, the old timelines, the old story is not a commitment. It is a weight. And the weight, when it's not aligned with the direction, does not make you faster. It makes you slower. It makes the building heavier. It makes the second half a correction rather than a continuation. The deliberated release is the act of looking at everything you are carrying into the second half and asking, does this still belong to me? Is this still mine? Was this built for the woman that I am now or for the woman that I was? And if it was built for the woman that I was, with love, with respect, with gratitude for the clarity that she had at the time, it is time to set it down. The release creates the space, and the space is where the realignment lives because you cannot realign a business that is still organized around the old architecture. You have to clear the old architecture first, make the space, and then build into the space from the woman that you are now, with the clarity you have now, with the calling that you have now, with the capacity that you have now. Movement number three, rebuild from the current truth. The third movement is the one that it feels like the beginning. And it is, but only because the first two movements have created the conditions for a genuine beginning rather than a continuation of the old one. Rebuild the plan, not from the January goals, adjust it from the shortfall, from the current truth, from the honest inventory, from the clear space that the deliberated release created. What does the woman you are now, the one with 6 months of wisdom, 6 months of clarity, 6 months of earning understanding about her business, her market, her offers, and herself, what does she want to build in the next 6 months? Not what she should build, not what the original plan said she should build, what she does want to build now. What is alive in her now? What is the direction that the first half revealed, not the direction that the January spreadsheet prescribed? What offers that she wants to lead with? The ones that the market and the energy data have both confirmed. What pace does she wants to hold? The one that the first half demonstrated is sustainable, not the one that the ambition declared was possible. Plan with me is not at the midpoint about filling a calendar. It is about building the structure around the woman, the current woman, the real woman, the one who's entering the second half with a specific, hard won personal understanding of who she is and what she is here to do. And the plan that is built from that place, from the current truth, rather than from the old expectation, it has a different quality. It feels like alignment rather than obligation. It generates energy rather than consuming it. It produces the specific, unmistakable experience of building from the inside out, where the strategy, the expression of the woman, rather than the cage she's trying to fit herself into. This is the realignment, the genuine structural identity level realignment that the midpoint is actually offering you, not as a punishment for underperforming against January goals. It's an invitation to build the second half from the truth of who you are now, which is always, always more capable, more specific, and more aligned than the version who made the plan for 6 months ago. Subscribe right now if you are not already in this community, because the reset with me starts in a conversation, the real one, the one that starts from truth and builds from alignment. It's the conversation that happens here every week, not the performance of productivity, the actual recalibration. Subscribe and stay for the real work. Let me show you what she looks like. The woman who used the midpoint not as a correction, but as a genuine reset, not as a fantasy, as a map. She entered the second half differently than she entered the first, not with more urgency, but with more clarity, not with tighter execution, but with true alignment, not with the specific exhaustion of energy of trying to close the gap that she has measured against a version of herself that she has outgrown, but with the specific, grounded, unmistakable energy of a woman who's building from who she actually is. She released something at the midpoint, a goal, an offer, a timeline, a story, something that the January version of her thought that it was essential and that the July version of her recognized that it was a weight. And then the release created a space that she did not immediately fill. She let the space be a space. Let the clearing be clear. And in that clearing, the new direction emerged. Not from the ambition, not from the strategy, but from the specific, quiet, earned clarity of a woman who has been shaped by 6 months of real contact with her real business and her real self. Her second half does not look like her first half. The offers are different, more precise, more aligned, fewer in numbers and deeper in impact. The pace is different, not slower, more intentional. Each action chosen from alignment rather than volume. The revenue is different, not because she's doing more, because she's doing what is actually hers with her full weight behind it. In full weight action produces a return that scattered volume cannot match. She's not behind. She's not ahead. She is aligned. In alignment, the specific, structural, honest to the current truth alignment between the woman and the plan is the only position from which sustainable, compounding, genuine, fulfilling growth is available. The midpoint gave her permission not to give up on the year, to get honest about the year, to stop measuring herself against a plan that it was built for someone that she no longer is, and to build the rest of the year around the woman that she has become, who is, in every case, more ready for what is next than the woman who made the plan could have known. I want to leave you with the most directed, most practical, most immediately applicable thing that I can offer you today. The midpoint is not a measure of your performance. It is an invitation to your honesty. The gap between where you plan to be and where you are is not a report card. It is information. And the information is not telling you that you have failed. It is telling you that you have changed. That the woman who made the plan and the woman who's living the year are not the same woman, and that the plan needs to be updated to reflect the woman, not the other way around. The mid-year reset that it matters is the one that starts from the current truth, the honest inventory, the deliberated release, the rebuilding from who you are now, not from who you were, not from who you plan to be, who you are right now. After 6 months of building and learning and being shaped by the very thing you are building, that woman, the current one, the real one, the one with the earned clarity in the specific edges and the personal understanding of what she is here to do. She's the architect of the second half, not the January version, this version. And the plan she builds will be different from the one she inherited because it will be real. And real plans built from real truth. But real women have a way of working that borrowed plans never do. Three things before you go. If today's episode gave you permission to be honest about the midpoint, permission to release what is no longer yours, permission to rebuild the woman that you are now rather than the one you plan to be, like this video right now. One thought. Because there is a woman watching who is about to double down on a plan that it no longer fits her. And your one thought is how she finds the realignment instead. Leave a comment with the words, I build from who I am now. Because that declaration is spoken, witness it, enter into the record of this community is the beginning of the reset. The moment where you stop inheriting the old plan and start authorizing the new one. I read every comment and I will see yours. And if you are ready for the guided one-on-one version of this realignment, if the honest inventory rebuilds something, if the deliberated release names something you need support in actually letting go of, if the rebuilding requires a conversation with someone who knows how to hold the weight of what you are discovering, go to therealnextlevel.com and apply. Tell me what the midpoint rebuild. Tell me what it needs to be released. Tell me what the woman you are now wants to build. I read every application, and the woman who is ready for the real reset will not be turned away. Subscribe if you are not already. The realignment conversation continues every week, and the woman you are becoming needs a community that it builds from truth. I will see you on the next episode, and I will see you next week on our playground. Yellow